Okay, I got a really interesting gun here. English, custom-made side-by-side. That is a modern gun. It's made in 1968. And it is interesting because it combines a lot of the up-to-date, at the time, ideas of the two main theorists of shooting technique and gun making. The first being Robert Churchill. Here's a book he wrote, who was a London gunmaker as well as theorist of shooting technique. And the other man being Percy Stanbury, who was a shooting coach at the West London Shooting School. And he was probably the greatest shot that England produced. He was witnessed several times shooting wood pigeons, not clay pigeons, but actual wood pigeons, shooting 5 in a row before the first shot bird, hit the ground. So, for example, another shooting luminary of the Victorian and Edwardian times, Lord Ripon, he was claimed to have shot 7 partridges before the first one hit the ground, or they were pheasants, or he shot 7 birds. I'm not sure if they're pheasants or partridge before the first one hit the ground, but that's largely been disproven that that never happened. Percy Stanbury actually did, with a 5-shot magazine automatic, shoot 5 birds before the first one hit the ground. So oftentimes people wonder, well, why did the British gun trade fail so dramatically? Both Birmingham and London, whereas at one time it commanded so much of the market. But this gun, which I'll show you in a moment, is a very interesting sort of interpretation of where the gun trade could have gone, what it could have offered, and how it could have countered modern day over and unders, particularly Italian guns. And it's a fairly broad departure from the traditional English game gun. So before I show you the gun itself, very briefly, I'm just going to pontificate about this gun for a short period of time, maybe a longish period of time, and then once I've exhausted your attention in that regard, I will shoot the gun at some simulated game style clay targets. So before I open the case, maybe we can just take a moment to appreciate the case itself. Absolutely beautiful figured walnut case, and if you sort of memorize that grain pattern right there, I'll flip the case over and you can see that it's matched on the back. So it's identical front and back. Also, you can see that the case is put together via wood-to-wood joints, so there are no mechanical fasteners holding the case together. It's got these really nice cast English gun case corners, hand-stitched leather handle with these brass caps where it attaches, and the brass caps are nice because kind of the word on the street on some old English gun cases is don't pick them up by the handle because the handle will fall off. This is a very secure way of attaching them. It's got a nice keyed brass latch. So I will So here we have a custom-made Webley and Scott. Oh, go this way. Which, beyond just being a beautiful gun, is an interesting gun because, like I said, it into its specification, it takes the ideas of the two most prominent sort of developers of technique, and those techniques are still followed today. Like I said, Percy Stanbury and Robert Churchill. So if you go to the UK or if you go to a British shooting coach, chances are they're going to instruct you in either the Percy Stanbury method or the Robert Churchill method. Or if you go to any of the shooting schools in the UK, like Northwood, it's a shooting school run by Holland and Holland, or Purdy, or any of those shooting schools, they will be using one of those techniques, slightly updated, but the foundation is Churchill or Stanbury. So, first thing to remember is that the traditional English game gun, which is sort of seen as the paragon of beauty and gun making prowess, was primarily designed for driven shooting. So many of the features that went into that were designed for driven shooting, and the imperatives of driven shooting, like the demand for maximum firepower. So for example, ejectors were developed for shooting a pair or a trio or even sometimes a quartet of guns with a loader or two loaders, and for ejecting and reloading the gun as quickly as possible to take advantage of the birds in the sky on drives. And if anybody's not familiar with how driven shooting works, it's the guns or the men who are shooting stand at a fixed spot, and the birds are driven over the top of them by beaters at about 35 to 40 yards, and you're shooting at a 45 to 60 degree angle. And in the Edwardian and the Victorian times, these were huge affairs at sporting estates. They were incredibly costly. I'll just to sort of paint the picture really briefly, here is an interesting book. It's called The Big Shots, Edwardian Shooting Parties by Jonathan Ruffer. And he describes the day in December 13, a day in December 1913 when nearly 4,000 pheasants were killed at one shooting party. And the train going home. Now, at this shooting party was King George V and the Prince of Wales. And in the train going home, and I'm just reading here, in the train going home, the Prince of Wales noticed the king was unusually silent. At last, he quietly said, "Perhaps we overdid it today." But these were huge events, enormous bags of birds, and at great expense. And that was the type of shooting that largely drove development of the English shotgun. And the period of greatest innovation was also the period of the greatest excess at these shooting parties. So, we're talking 1870s to just before the First World War. And so by mid-1880s, all your major shotgun actions had been developed. The Holland Royal, the Purdy sidelock, the Anson and Dealey boxlock, which was patented in 1875. So those ideals of what a gun should be and how it should handle and technically how it should be made was very much developed for the imperatives of that style of shooting. Now, people like Robert Churchill and Percy Stanbury were more modern in their thinking, and they were, although the over and under, which obviously now is king in terms of shooting, was perfected, like the Boss and the Woodward style over and under was perfected by 1909, 1913 respectively, but did not gain popularity in terms of the game shooting circles of the time. So this gun is really interesting because it's sort of an amalgamation of the different ideas of Robert Churchill and Percy Stanbury. And I know quite a bit about the gun and the man who specified the gun. I have actually the original receipt for it when it was ordered from Webley's in 1968. And you shouldn't have waited so long to buy your own because it was only 195 pounds at the time, which it was actually a considerable amount of money. And it's interesting to note that Percy Stanbury, who was, again, as I said, recognized as being one of the best shots of all time, and presumably could have had any gun that he wanted, he himself went to Webley and Scott and specified a custom gun from them, which was not dissimilar to the specifications of this gun. And many people would say it's very much like an over and under. And this gun too has many qualities in terms of pointability and handling of an over and under as well. But you get the really elegant, quick handling of a side-by-side. This gun is 6 pounds, 10 ounces, so it has that traditional game gun feel, but with a lot of thought put into it. So, first thing I'd like to point out is the, let me just get it lined up with the camera here, is the Churchill rib, the high, narrow Churchill rib. And I'll try to put it head on so that you can see what it looks like if you're not familiar with it. It's high, narrow, file cut, meaning there are grooves running at 90 degrees to the longitudinal run of the rib. And Churchill was a firm believer in this rib. It's not dissimilar to the ribs you see on modern over and unders. And I guess I'll just show you very briefly a more traditional concave English game rib. Many people are probably familiar with that. Are you going to miss everything with this concave rib and hit everything with the Churchill rib? No, not saying that at all. But it does have its own merits. And since I'm not an expert, I will refer to the words of a real expert, and that is the works of G.T. Garwood, who was a noted gun writer. He was gun editor of the Shooting Times in the 1960s and 70s. And really interestingly, he was a chartered engineer, so he brings a scientific, technical background. So he addresses a lot of sort of conventional wisdom of shotgun shooting, but he doesn't just pontificate like I'm doing in terms of giving answers, but empirically tests those assumptions with using the scientific method and to see what the actual outcome is. So he has a long section in this book on pointability of an over and under, which is often claimed to be a superior pointable gun. And he has a whole section, various experiments that he does regarding pointability. And one thing he notes very clearly is that the Churchill style rib makes, I'll just read really quick, makes the gun decidedly more pointable than it would be if it had a plain hollow rib, blah, blah, blah. And the reason that he gives for that is that the design of the rib essentially creates these two dark, hollow lines, shadows on either side of the rib that is picked up by your subconscious vision and aids in pointability, and it provides sort of a runway type effect of pointability. And I guess the analogy one could make is when you're driving in a car on the road and you have the white line on your right or your left and the yellow line in the center, you're not focusing. You don't have a hard focus on either of those two lines, because if you did, traveling at 60 to 80 miles an hour, you would be in the opposing lane of traffic, you'd be off in the ditch somewhere. You're staring at a point far ahead of you in the same way that you would when you're shotgun shooting. You're focusing on the target. You're not focusing on the barrel of the gun or the bead on the end of the barrel. You're focusing far ahead of you, but in your subconscious vision, you pick up those two lines, and that allows you to remain in between them and to sort of steer or aim the car around curves and all sorts of obstacles. So that is the salient advantage of the Churchill style rib, and it's a very interesting feature. Now, second feature, also a Churchill sort of I guess Churchill approved sort of feature, is the semi-beaver tail grip. This is 10 inches long. Before I encountered this gun, most of the beaver tail grips I'd seen were on machine-made guns. I very much disliked them. They're ugly, my opinion only, and bulbous, and they don't make the gun look very nice, and I didn't like them because they're so big and bulky. They hold your hand way off the barrels, which wasn't something that I liked at all. Because one of the things I like about an over and under is the ability to hold onto the barrels. So this beaver tail grip is semi-beaver tail grip, and it allows you to hold the gun in the normal side-by-side way, with your thumb parallel and your finger pointing like that. But it does two things. It fills out this part of your palm and gives you a little more control of the barrels. But also, as Churchill explains, it stops the tendency to cant the barrels, meaning when you mount the gun, you obviously want to mount with the barrels coplanar with the horizontal plane or parallel to the horizontal plane. You don't want to be, now I'm exaggerating obviously, but you don't want to be twisting it one way or the other. And he wrote that the beaver tail, or in this case semi-beaver tail, stopped you from doing that. And I have to agree. And I also think that it is a nice way of providing an index for your hand so that you can put your hand, like I always align the round part up here with a particular joint on my finger so that I can put my hand in the same place every time I mount the gun. And I have that sort of tactile ability to index my hand to the same spot, so that I think any good shooting coach would tell you that one of the keys to good gun mounting is that you do the same thing every time, and that you hold the gun the same way, you bring it up to the same place in your cheek, you hold the barrels in the same place, you put your hand on the hand of the stock in the same way, so that you are mounting the gun in the same way every single time, and you have that consistency and muscle memory that aids a really good consistent gun mount. And I find that this style of forend really aids in that, and that's something I really like. Although I have not seen a lot of nice beaver tail forends. Now, beaver tail forends aren't super rare in England. They were common on competition live pigeon guns, things like that. But you didn't often see them on a game gun per se. Next feature we have here is its similarity, like I said, to the gun specified by Percy Stanbury, to the Webley and Scott gun that he had built for himself, which was semi pistol grip, single trigger, higher in the comb than game guns were at the time, which were much lower in the comb typically. This gun is, of course, because it's made in 1968, has a thoroughly modern stock shape and height or drop to the comb. And overall, it combines some of the although all English guns are by and large very beautiful to look at, it combines a lot of the theoretical aspects of what these two men were coming to realize about what a side-by-side could be, without going to the other extreme, or not extreme, but the other sort of swing of the pendulum of of getting an over and under, because both men really liked side-by-sides. They both always shot them, but they realized that the side-by-side needed a bit of updating, and this is what makes this specification of gun really interesting, is that it sort of combines many of the ideas of those two men. And of course it's got nicely specified cleaning rod, snap caps, oiler, cleaning rod accessories. Yeah, but overall, it's just a really nice example of one avenue. Perhaps the British could have exploited a bit more, updating the side-by-side a bit more, that they didn't necessarily do. But fortunately, we have this gun to show what they are capable of. So after this, I will just show the gun being shot and handled, and that'll be that. So thanks very much. Here on the grounds of Hackmatack Lodge, a private shooting estate in Maine. I am in the simulated grouse butt here, which simulates driven grouse, as is commonly done in Scotland and the north of England. I'll be showing the custom-made Webley and Scott, and I'll just be firing the gun at some driven targets to show the reliability of the single trigger, as well as the ejector work.